हेलो व्यूअर्स। तो आज हम लोग करने जा रहे हैं साइकोलॉजी चैप्टर वन की चैप्टर वन को पढ़ने जा रहे हैं। तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हम लोग यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं व्हाट इज साइकोलॉजी लिखा है, क्लास 11 का चैप्टर वन है। तो इसकी कंटेंट रीडिंग है और नाउ आई जस्ट गोइंग टू स्टार्ट। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी हैव टू read about the introduction. You were perhaps asked by your teacher in the first class why you opted for psychology over other subjects. What do you hope to learn? If you were asked this question, what was your response? Generally, the range of the response which surface uh, uh, which surface in class to the question are truly weirdling. Most students give the insane responses, like they want to know what others are thinking. But then one also comes across such responses as asking, as knowing oneself, knowledge, knowing others, or more specific responses like knowing why people dream, why people go out of their ways to help others or beat each other up. And all ancient traditions have engaged themselves with a question about human nature. Human nature. The Indian philosopher tradition, in particularly, deals with the questions relating to why people have behaved in the manner in which they do. Why are people generally unhappy? What changes should they bring about in themselves if they desire happiness in their lives? Like all knowledge, psychological knowledge too is intended to contribute to human well-being. If the world is full of misery, it is largely due to humans themselves. Perhaps you have all asked why 9/11 or war in Iraq happened, why the innocent people in Delhi, Mumbai, Srinagar, or in the northeast have to face bombs or bullets. Psychologists ask what is in the experience of the young men which turned themselves into the terror seeking revenges. But there is another side of the human nature. You may have heard the name of the Major H.P.S. Ahluwalia, paralyzed waist down because of the injured he suffered in the war with Pakistan, who climbed the Mount Everest. What moved him to climb such a height? These are not only questions about human nature, which psychology addressed as a human science. You will be surprised to learn that modern psychology also deals with somehow numericus micro level phenomena like consciousness, focusing attention in the face of noise, or supporters trying to burn down a shopping complex after their team has scored victory in the football game over its traditional rival. Psychology cannot claim the answer has been found to these complex questions, but it surely has improved upon the understanding and how to make sense of these phenomena. The most striking aspect of this discipline, unlike other sciences, lie in the study of psychological processes which are largely internal and available to humans for observing within themselves. Now here we going on our further study. So there's question asked about what is psychology. Any knowledge discipline is hard to define. Firstly, because it involves continuously. Secondly, because the range of the phenomena it studied cannot be captured by any one definition. This is even more true of psychology. Long time back, the student like yourself were told that the term psychology is derived from two Greek words. Psyche means the soul and the logos means science or study of a subject. Thus, psychology was a study of soul or mind, but since then it has moved away considerably from the focus and established itself as a scientific discipline which deals with process underlying human experiences and behavior. The range of the phenomena it studies some of which mentioned above are spread over the several levels of years, individual diadic to personal groups and organizations. They also have biological as well as social bases. Naturally, therefore, the method required to study them is also very greatly depending on the phenomena on one's want to study. A discipline is defined both in terms of what it study and how it is studied. In fact, more in terms of how or methods it use. Keeping this in view, psychology is defined formally as a science which studied mental process, experiences, and behavior in different contexts. In doing so, it uses method of biological and social sciences to obtain data systematically. It makes sense of the data so that they can be organized as knowledge. Let us try to understand the three terms used in the definition, namely mental process, experiences, and behavior. What we say experience are initial internal to the experience of person, then we refer to states of consciousness or awareness or mental process. We use our mental process when we think to try to solve a problem, to know or remember something. Remember something. One's level at which these mental processes are reflected in the brain activity. As we think or solve a mathematical problem, our brain activity can be observed using different techniques of the brain imagining. How we can say that the brain activities and mental process are the same, although they are interdependent. Mental activities and the neural activities are minimally overlapping processes, but they are identical. Unlike the brain, the mind does not have a physical structure or the location. Mind emerge and evolve as a interaction and experiences in the world get dynamically organized in the form of a system which is responsible for the occurrence of the various mental processes. The brain activity provide important clues as to how to our mind function, but the consciousness of experiences and the mental processes are much more than the neural or the brain activity. Even when we are asleep, some mental activities go on. We dream and receive some information, such as a knock on the door while we are asleep. Some psychologists have shown that we also learn and remember in our sleep. Mental processes such as remembering, learning, knowing, perceiving, feeling are of the interest to psychologists. They study these processes to try to understand how the mind works and help us to improve the use of application. These mental capacities, psychologists also study the experience of the pupil. Experiences are subjective in nature. We cannot directly observe or know someone else's experiences. The experienced person can be aware or be conscious or of her or his experiences. Thus, experiences are embedded in our awareness or consciousness. Psychologists have focused on experiences of the pain being experienced or by terminally ill patient, or of the psychological pain felt in the betterment beside the experience which lead to positive feelings such as in romantic intercourse. There are some experiences also which attract the attention of attention of psychologists such as when a yogi meditates to enter different level of consciousness and create a new kind of experience, or when a drug addict takes a particular kind of drugs at a high. Even though such drugs are extremely harmful, experiences are influenced by internal and external conditions uh, of the experiencer. If you are traveling in a crowded bus during a hot summer day, you may not experience the usual discomfort. If you are going to a picnic with some close friends, thus the nature of the experience can also be understood and by analyzing a complex set of internal and external conditions. Behavior are the responses or the reaction we make, activities we engage in, which sometimes something is hurted at you. Your eyes blink in the simple reflex action you are taking in an examination can feel your heart pounding. You decide to go to the particular movie with a friend. Behavior be may simple or the complex sort or enduring. Some behavior are overt and they can be overwhelming, seen and or sensed by an observer. Some of the internal covert when you are not in different situation while playing a games of the chess, you almost feel hand muscles twitching, trying to experiment with a move. All the behaviors covert or the over covert are associated with the triggers by some stimulus in the environment or changes that happen internally. You may see a tiger and run, think that a tiger is decided to flee. Some psychologists study behavior as an associated between stimulus and response. Both stimulus and responses can be internal or external. Psychology as a discipline. Now we study psychology as a discipline. As we have discussed above, the psychology studies behavior, experience, and the mental processes. It seeks to understand the and explain how mind work and how different mental processes result in different behavior. When we observe other as like common person, our own points of the view of the way of the understanding the world influence our interpretations of their behavior and the experiences. Psychologists try to minimize such biases in the explanation of the behavior and experience in the various ways. Such do so by seeking to make their analysis scientific and objective. Others seek to explain behavior from the point of view of the experiences person because they think that the experience in the Indian they think that the experiences person because they think that the subjectivity it is necessary aspect of the human experiences in the Indian context. Indian traditional self uh, self reflection and analysis of our consciousness, it is held as a major source of the psychologist understanding. Many Western psychologists have also begun to emphasize the role of self reflection and self knowledge in understanding human behavior and the experiences, regardless of different in the way psychologists go about a study of the behavior, mental processes, and the experiences. They seek to understand and explain them in a systematic and verifying manner. Psychology, though it is very old knowledge discipline, is a young science. If one were to take of the year founding of the first laboratory of psychology in 1879 in a lippage. However, what kind of science is psychology still remain a matter of debate, particularly because new interaction of the have emerged in recent times. Psychology generally categorized as a social science, but it is should not come as you surprise that it not only other country but in India it is also subject of study offered in faculty of science both at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Many students go on BSc or MSc degree in universities. In fact, two of the most sought emerging disciplines which are continuously borrow from psychology are neuroscience and computer science. Of some of the as would be aware, the fast developing brain imaging technique like MRI, EEG, etc., which makes possible to study brain processes in real time, i.e., they are actually taking places similarly, in IT areas, both human computer are interacting and artificial intelligence cannot be possibly grow without psychological knowledge in cognitive processes. Thus, the psychology as a discipline today have parallel streams, one which make use of the method in physical and the biological sciences, and the other which make use of method of social and culture sciences in study of various psychological and social phenomena. These streams sometimes converge only to drift apart and go their separate way. In the first case, psychology considered itself as a discipline which focuses on largely on the biological process to explain human behavior. It assumes that all behavior phenomena have cause which can be discovered if we can collect data and systematically under controlled condition. Here the aim to of the research is to know the causes and effects relationships so that the prediction of the behavior phenomena can be made and the behavior can be controlled if needed to be. On the other hand, psychology as a social science focuses on how behavioral phenomena can be explained in terms of interaction that take place in between the person and the socio-cultural context of the which he see is part of each behavioral phenomena is assumed to have multiple causes. Let us examine these two streams separately. Psychological as a natural sciences. It has been mentioned carrier that psychology had a root of in philosophy. However, modern psychology has developed because of the application of scientific method to study psychological phenomena. Science places a great deal of the emphasis on objectivity, which can obtain this is consciousness on the definition of a concept and how it can be जैसे कि हम लोगों ने यहाँ पे पढ़ लिया द कॉन्सेप्ट एंड हाउ इट इज कैन बी मीजर्ड इट कैन बी मीजर्ड psychology was influenced by the Descartes and the later on why which developments in the physics can has been grown by following what is called hypothetical deductive model. The model suggested that the scientist advanced can take a place if you have a theory to explain a phenomena. For example, physicists have what is called Big Bang theory to explain how the universe came to be formed. Theory is nothing else but a set of statements about the how a certain complex phenomena can be explained with the help of the propositions which are interrelated based on the theory. Scientists deduced a proposed a hypothesis that offer a tentative explanation of how a certain phenomena take place. The hypothesis then is tested and proved true or false based on the empirical data that one has gathered. The theory is revised. A theory is revised if data are gathered point in the different direction than one suggested by the hypothesis. Using these above the approach, psychologists have also developed theories of learning, memory, attention, perception, motivation, and emotions, etc. They had made the scientific progression until date. Most of the research in psychology follow these approaches. Apart from this, psychologists have been also considered influenced by the evolutionary approaches which have been dominated in biological sciences. This approach has been used to explain kind of psychological phenomena such as attachment and the aggression. To be mentioned a few, just psychological as a science, social sciences be mentioned above. The psychology is the recognized as more as a social science because it studies the behavior of the human beings in the social cultural context. Humans are not only influenced by the social culture context, they also create them. A psychology as a social science discipline focus on the social being. Considered the following story of Rajnita and Subham Sabnam. Ranjita and Sabnam are in the same class. Although they were in the same class, they were adequate with each other, and lives were quite different from Ranjita over from the farmer family. Her grandparents or elder brother work on the farms. They live together in the houses in the village. Rajata was a good athlete, was a best long run distance in the school. She loved meeting people and making friends. Unlike her, Sabnam lived with her mother in the same village. Her father was working in an office in town nearby and came home during holidays. Sabnam was a good artist and loved stayed home and taking care of her younger brothers. She was shy and avoided meeting people. Last year there were heavy rain and the river ran nearby overflowed into the village. Many houses or low-lying areas were flooded. The villagers got together and organized which help and gave shelter to people in the distress. Sabnam's house was flooded and came to live in Ranjita's house with the help with her mother and brother. Ranjita was happy helping the family and making them feel comfortable in her house because when the flood water receded, Ranjita's mother and grandmother helped Sabnam's mother to set up their houses. The two families become very close. Ranjita and Sabnam also become very good friends. In the case of Ranjita, both are different persons. They grow up in a different families under complex social and cultural conditions. You can see some regularly in the relationship of the nature and existing and the mental process with the social and physical environment, such as the same time there are variation in their behavior and experiences which would be difficult to predict using the non psychological principles. One can understand why the how and the individual in communicate become quite helpful and self-sacrificing in the crisis, as was the case with the people in the village of Ranjita Sabnam. And but even in that case, not every villager was equally helpful. Also, under section circumferences, not every community is forthcoming. In fact, sometimes the opposite is true. People become antisocial under similar circulation in equating and in looting and exploitation. When someone crisis occurs, this so the psychological deals with the human behavior and the experience in the context of the society of the culture. Thus the psychology is a science, social science, which focus on the individual and communities in relation to their socio-cultural and physiological environment. Now we just going on for the study understanding mind and behavior. First, here we read understanding mind and behavior. You will recall the psychology was once defined as a science of mind. For many decades. The mind remained a taboo in the psychology because it does not define in a concrete behavior term or is a location. Location could not be indicated. The term mind has returned to psychology. We should thank neuroscientists like Sperry and physicists like Penrose, who have been given it the respect which it deserves. And now have these are scientists in various disciplines including psychology who think that the implied theory of the mind is the possible, although it is far away. What is mind? In the it is same in as brain. It is true and that mind can exist without brain, but mind is the separate entity. This is can be appreciated an account of several interesting cases that have been documented. Some patients have occupied lobes which are the responsible for the vision, which surgically removed, located, and the configured of the visual clues. Similarly, a mature athlete lost his legs in the motorcycle accident but continued to feel an arm and also continued to feel its movement, which offered coffee his phenomenon arm reached out of the coffee cup, and when the someone pulled it out in protested. There is a similar cases documented as a neuroscientist, a young man who was suffering in brain injury in an accident after he returned home from the hospital claimed that the parent had been displaced by the duplicates they were imposted. In each of these cases, the person should suffered from the damage of some part of the brain, but this his mind has been remained intact, and it was earlier believed by the scientists that there is no relationship between mind between body and a relationship between mind and the body, and that they were parallel to each other. Recent studies in affected neuroscience have clearly shown that there is a relationship between mind and behavior. It has been so that using positive visualization technique and feeling positive emotions, one can be bring significant changes in bodily process. Orenes has shown this is a number of study, and with his patient in these studies, person had with blocked arteries was made to visual that blood can flowing through her and blocked arteries. After practicing this over a period of time, significant relief obtained by these patient in the degrees of the blockages become significant. Less use of mental imagining guaranteed by the people in his mind have been used to cover various kind of phobias, irritational fear of object and situations. A new definition called psychoneuroimmunology has emerged, which has emphasis on role of the play mind in strengthening the immune system. Population popular notion about the discipline of the psychology. Population notion about discipline about the discipline of psychology. We mentioned above the everyday almost every one of us act like a psychologist. We try to understand why someone behaved in the manner in which he or she did, and come up with a ready explanation. Not only this, most of us have developed our own theory of human behavior. If we want to some worker, if we want to some worker to perform that we will need to push her or him. Maybe use of strict popular theories of human behavior based on the common sense may or may not be true if investigated scientifically. In fact, you will find that the common senses explanation of human behavior are based on highlighted and explain every little. For example, if a friend you love goes away to a distant place, what will happen to your attraction for him or her? There are two saying which you may recall to answer this question. One of them is out of the sight of your mind. Second is the distance make your heart grow fonder. Both of them opposite settlement. So which one is true? The explanation is your life after your friend leaves. Suppose you are able to find a new friend and seeing out of sight, out of mind, you will be used by you and or other to explain your behavior. If you are unable to find new friend, you will keep remembering your friend fondly. In the case, the saying distance makes the heart grow fonder will explain your behavior. Notice that in the in notice both in both cases the explanation follow the occurrence of behavior. Common sense is based on the hindsight. Psychology is a science look at the pattern behavior which can be predicted and explained after the behavior after scientific knowledge after generated by the psychology after running against the common sense. One such example is studied by the Dweck 1975. She was concerned with the children who gave the up easily when faced with a condition problem failure. She wondered how they could help. Common sense tell us about a give easy problem in the order to increase the success rate. So if the confidence goes up, the only little should we give them a difficult problem which they can be able to solve because of their new found confidence. Dweck study tested this three looked to group of the students who were the trained for the 25 days in the solving a problem math problem. The first group was given a essay problem to which the were always given solve. The second group had been mixed easy and difficult problem. Obviously, in case of difficult problems, they filled whenever this happened. Drake told them that the failure was because they had not tried hard enough to persuaded them not to give up and keep trying after training period. After gaining period was over, a new set of math problems were given to the two groups. Were Dweck found goes against common belief. Those who had always succeeded because they were given an easy problem gave up much faster, sorry, much faster when they faced failure than that those who had experience of both successful and failure and were taught to attribute failure to the lack of efforts. There are many other common sense notion which have you may not find to be true. Not too long it was believed in some cultures that men are more intelligent than the women, or the women cause the more accident than the empirical student. The studies have showed that the both are untrue. Common sense are also tell us the one is not able to give answer one's best if you are asked to perform before the large audience. Psychologists studied have shown that if you have participated well, you may actually perform better because presence of the other have performance. It is hoped that as you have through the textbook, you will discover the many of the beliefs and undergo of the human behavior will change. You will also gather the psychologists are different from the astrologer, tantric, and palm reader because they systematically examine proposition based on the data of the developed principle about the human behavior and other psychologist phenomena. Now here we go, evolution of psychology. Psychology is a modern discipline which is influenced to a large extent by Western development, has a short history. It grow questions of psychology significance. We we mentioned earlier that we forming sorry concerned with the question of psychological significance. We mentioned earlier the forming beginning of the modern psychology is tracked back to 1879 when the first experimental laboratory was established in Leipzig, Germany by William Wundt. Wundt was interested in the study of the conscious experience, wanted to analyze the constituents of the building constituent of building block of the mind. Psychologists have during Wundt's time Weinstein analyzed the structure of the mind through the introspection and therefore were called structuralists or introspection was the procedure in which the individual our subject is a psychological experiment were asked to describe in detail how their own mental processes or experiences. However, introspection as the method did any satisfy many other psychologists in it was considered less scientific because the interpretation report could not give verified by outside them observer. This led to the development of new perspective of psychology. An American psychologist, William James, who had set up the psychological laboratory in Cambridge, uh, Massachusetts, soon after settled up to the Lippisch laboratory, developed what was called the fundamentalist approach to the study of the human mind. William James believed that instead of focusing on the structure of the mind, psychology psychology should instead study what the mind does and how behavior function in making people deals with the environment. For example, functionists focused on how behavior, according to the James William consciousness, as on the ongoing stream of the mental processes. Interaction with the environment formation formed the core of the psychology. A very influential education thinker of the time, John Dewey used functionalism to argue that human beings seek function effective by adapting to their environment. In the early 20th century, a new perspective called Gestalt psychology emerged in the emerged in the Germany as a result of the a result to the structuralism of Germany as a result reaction to the structuralism of the wounds. It focus on the organization perceptual experience instead of looking at the component of the mind. The Gestalt psychology argued that when we look at the world, our perceptual experiences is more than the sum of the component of the perception. In other words, what would be experience in more than is the input received from the environment. When the example light from the series of flash bulb falls on our retina, we actually experience movement of the light. When we see a movie, we actually have a series of rapid moving images are still picture following on our retina. Thus, the perceptual experience is more than a element. Experience is holistic. It is a gestalt. We will learn more about the gestalt psychology, which we discussed about in Nature of the Perception, Chapter 5. Yet another research of the structuralism came in the form of behaviorism. Around 1910, John Watson rejected the idea of mind and consciousness as a subject matter of the psychology. He was greatly influenced by the work of the physiologists like Evian Pavlov on the classical conditioning. For Watson, mind is not observable and introspective is subjective because it cannot be verified by another observer. According to him, scientific psychology must be focused on the is observable and verifiable. He defined psychology as a study of the behavior on or responses to stimuli which can be measured and studied objectively. Behaviorism of the Western was further developed by many influential psychologists who are known as the behavioralists. Most prominent among them is Val Skinner, who applied behaviorism as a wide range of situations and popularized the approaches we call discuss. Skinner work later is in a textbook authored the behaviorism dominated the field of psychology for several decades after the Watson number of the approaches and viewed about the psychology and its subject matter were developing around the same time. One person who was struck the world with the traditional view of the human nature was Sigmund Freud, and Freud viewed human behavior as a dynamic manifestation of the unconscious desires and the conflict. He founded psychoanalysis as a system to understand and cure psychological disorders, while feudism psychoanalysis viewed from human being as a motivated by unconscious desires for the gratification of the pleasure pleasure seeking and often sexually desired. The humanistic perspective in the psychology took a more positive view to the human nature. A humanistic such as Carlo Rogers and Abraham Maslow emphasized the free will of the human being and their nature striving to grow unfold their inner potential. They argued that the behaviorism with emphasis on behavior as determined by the environmental condition undertaken by the human freedom and dignity and takes a mechanism view of the human nature. These different approaches are filled the history of the modern psychology and produced multiple perspectives of development. Each of the following perspective has own focuses and draw our attention to the complexity of the psychological processes. These are the strength as well as the weakness on the each appeal. Some of these further approaches have been lead to the further.